Please meet today's guest, Talin Andonians.
Companies outgrow people, and those tough decisions need to be made. But I think they need to be made with respect and dignity and being truthful in those conversations. It's hard because it's people's livelihoods, it's people's dreams. And at the same time, those are tough decisions that need to serve the business.
What happens when a startup hits product market fit, raises their Series B, and suddenly realizes they have no idea how to scale? Well, they call someone like my guest today. Talin Andonians is a scaling specialist who joins founder-led companies at their most critical inflection point, when what got them here won't get them there. She served as COO and CEO across industries from legal tech to construction to retail, and she's developed a battle-tested framework for transforming scrappy startups into scalable organizations. Here's what makes Talin's perspective unique. She grew up Armenian in Austria, navigating different cultures and languages from childhood. That experience taught her how to connect with people, read situations quickly, and adapt. Exactly the skills you need when you walk into a company as a stranger and have to earn trust while pushing uncomfortable change. In this episode, Talin shares her 5 pillars of scaling, explains why you can't scale heroics, and reveals the painful lessons she learned when go-to-market and operations got out of lockstep. She also shares her father's unusual technique for building grit, one that involved taping goals to the ceiling. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome, Talin, to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jothy. Great to be here.
Well, I like to always start so everybody gets a little bit of a sense of you. Tell us where you're originally from and where you live now.
I am Armenian, grew up in Austria, and now I live in Henderson, Nevada, just outside of Las Vegas.
Is that the path for a lot of Armenians, or is that unique to you think?
No, I think it's the path for majority of Armenians. There are twice as many Armenians who live outside of the country in the diaspora than in the country. I think after the genocide in 1915, a lot of Armenians spread into different countries and became immigrants of different countries. And so that's actually not very unique to me. You will see Armenians everywhere with their story of where their parents went to, where their grandparents went to.
But how did you said your name had some translation from German. Where did that happen?
Well, when I grew up, so my parents' family went from Armenia to Iran. That's where my parents were born and grew up. Then they immigrated to the US and then to Austria. And in Austria, when the Armenian name Talin was translated, it was translated into German, since, the language in Austria is German. If it would have been translated, the writing in the US, probably the spelling would be different to pronounce it differently.
Got it. So we'll get into what you're doing right now in a minute, but if you can also give us a little bit of your entrepreneurial journey, that would be a great start to get everybody to understand where your experience base comes from.
Yeah, sure. I have worked for a lot of different companies, different sizes, certainly prefer startups. And while I have personally not been the founder, I've been the person who comes in early on into a business and supports the founder in scaling organizations. That's been my sweet spot that I enjoy. I love high growth companies. So I've been in different industries, from higher education technology to legal services and technology, to construction, retail. It's all kinds of different industries, but what they all have in common is they have been high growth companies that needed to scale and went through a lot of change.
But you didn't just, come out of your mother knowing how to scale. Where did you learn that?
That's a great question. I think a lot at the beginning, a lot through trial and error. I would say that the first time I was really in a position having to learn to scale, I used to work for Jamba Juice in operations. And what that taught me was how much you had to focus on people and systems and processes to make things work, to be able to deliver for customers. And yeah, I made a lot of mistakes along the way. So a lot of learnings through that, a lot of learnings through great mentors I've had, a lot of readings I've had. So I think it's a combination of your network, the people you surround yourself with, and then the painful lessons that really stay with you. And then I would say the next opportunity, a couple of founders took a chance on me. We're great friends today. And I was able to experience scaling a e-discovery company. And that taught me a lot of lessons on, and I think really solidified how much I love working with founders in that unique moment when a company needs to scale and needs to figure out how to overcome some of the hurdles and the headwinds you face as a founder.
But you were at Jamba Juice,
Mm-hmm,
and that's a big franchise
mm-hmm,
operation. I've been in them. I've seen them in lots of places. So it's a big company,
mm-hmm.
and that's where you sort of first got the sense of what it takes to scale. Were these couple of founders that, sort of pulled you in? Was that right after that, or did you do other startups as well before that?
It was right after that. It just it just happened. I was actually a reference for a friend of mine who was interviewing for that position as a general manager. And I spoke to one of the founders, and I think we really connected over the phone during the reference call. And they started to pursue me for the role. So I called my friend and I said, "Hey, just so you know, I think they're kind of interviewing me now." And he said, "You should really go for it. I found something else." And so I took a chance.
And so you've done this scaling
Mhm.
for a number of startups, and you've probably, I'm guessing, you've developed a very nice reputation for yourself. So there's probably more people that need your help than you can do. I imagine you can really only do one at a time. You have to really dive all the way in. So
Yes.
how do you choose one?
I look at different factors. One of the things that's important to me is who are we serving? What's the mission and what's the underlying belief of the founder? Does that excite me or not? Do I see a lot of potential there or not? That is something that's important to me. Then I look at how open is the founder to change, because scaling a company takes a lot of change and a lot of difficult, uncomfortable decisions to get there. And when you work with founders who are not quite ready to let go of what was great before, or sometimes just don't have the humility to acknowledge that I'm not an expert in this area, I think it becomes difficult to partner. So for me, the founder, him or herself, and how they're wired and their personality and how I would work as a partner is very important as well. So I think those are two factors that I look for.
So when you're in that position, when you're brought in and you're going to help them scale,
Mhm.
um, they probably, in almost all cases, I assume, are going to put you on the senior team. You're going to be a C-suite level person,
Mhm.
probably COO in most cases, correct?
Yeah, so currently CEO, last company I was CEO, and then before that I was CO.
Okay, so bouncing around between those two.
Yes.
How did you have this interesting background with many different cultures, all mixed up in you, and that's why some of us in this country love immigrants.
Mhm.
Anyway, how has your background shaped who you've turned out to be? I know you think a lot about and you talk about leadership,
Mhm.
and it's something that you also have really built into yourself of being a good leader.
Mhm.
Is there a direct connection between your personal story, your background, and you being able to do this kind of a job, be a leader, and
Mhm.
especially when you come in, you're a stranger to the team, and you have to very quickly
Mhm.
come up to speed on the company, on the various people. You're going to be, I assume you're very good at getting them to like you, but also to respect you, and understand you're going to be a little bit of a whip cracker. I mean, to scale is hard.
Yes.
You're all used to everything being small, and that, everything, decisions are fast, and there's not a lot of process, and one of the whole things you got to do if you're scaling is start formalizing some
Mhm.
critical processes, or you can't scale. You
Yes.
can't be repetitive.
Yeah. Definitely. I believe that we're all on a journey and all of our experiences on this journey shape us. When I think about how I grew up, the circumstances I grew up in, I definitely believe it shaped me. I think when you grow up as Armenian in Austria, speaking a different language at home, you quickly learn to navigate through different perspectives and connecting to different people. And that has definitely had an impact on me today, how I connect with people. I think it's developed empathy. I'm a people centric leader and I enjoy to connect with people, understand their journey, be curious about their journeys. So I think that directly comes from the background. I think resilience and adaptability also come with when you grow up in a different country and hear your parents talk about all the stories of your grandparents and your parents and what they went through and what they have had to give up. And so it drives you to be competitive and resilient and you want to win and you want to do good. And so I think that all plays into I'm a very competitive person. I love to win. I think the adaptability, especially today when you think about the massive amount of change we have to navigate through, I embrace change more than others, I would say, when it comes to business. And I think that comes from having to navigate through that at a younger age.
So it's a big topic, but
Mhm.
can you sort of distill down for people what's the approach that you take? And I think you probably think it's a very important approach
Mhm.
because it's one you use to this type of scaling. I mean, we've hinted at it in a couple of things each of us has said. I mentioned process, and you've talked about, embracing change, and things are going to change as you scale. So, when you get in to, Acme Corporation,
Mhm.
a startup that's just doing great and is ready to scale. They've raised their Series A. They've proven product
Mhm.
market fit. They've got a steady stream of customers signing up, and certainly before they raise the Series A, or maybe in conjunction with Series B, in
Mhm.
conjunction with the Series B, they need your help. And what do you do and what do they have to do, under your direction? Sorry for the interruption, but in addition to the podcast, you might also be interested in the online program I've created for startup founders called Who Says You Can't Start Up? In it, I've tried to capture everything I've learned in the course of founding and running 9 startups over 37 years. It's 4 courses, each one about 15 video lessons, plus over 130 downloadable resources across all 4 courses. Each course individually is only $375. The QR code will take you where you can learn more. Now, back to the podcast.
I think the first thing I look at is how do we scale the strategy? Who do we want to serve? I think as companies grow, when you're a smaller company, oftentimes you try to be everything to everyone. And when you want to scale, you have to become really thoughtful about who do we want to serve, but also what do we say no to? It's just as important. So I think the part of really understanding what is my scale strategy, who do we want to serve? What is the product or service that's going to win? I think that's the work that needs to happen up front because everything else cascades from there. I think the second part I look at is we talked about process. It's about operational discipline. How do we create repeatability? It's hard to scale chaos. And when you're a smaller company and you don't have the processes in place, you often solve problems through heroics of individuals. You can't scale that. So it's really about identifying the process and that needs to happen and the automation. How do we get that operating leverage? But I do think one of the important pieces to consider is to not overprocess. One of the things I've experienced in my career is when you're too focused on process, you really take away from innovation, and you take away from people making independent decisions and having more open conversations. So you have to find the sweet spot. That is a moving target. It's going to depend as you grow as a company. The third part are people. I think in any business, to me, people are the foundation of the business. So you have to have the right people, and you have to invest in people. When you have a misaligned leadership team, you're going to fail as a company. You have to have the right people with the right desire and motivations and capabilities and alignment so we can grow together. And then the fourth part is,
Can I interrupt
of
and
course,
ask a number 3 before we do 4 and 5?
Mhm.
So you're almost certain to find some people that can't scale,
Yes,
or maybe they won't. Okay, one or
yes.
the other. So I'm sure you're very diplomatic, but how do
Mhm.
you need to get people like that? You can't just carry them along. They need to leave. And some of them, and this is probably a separate part of this
Mhm.
question, might be founders.
Yes, correct.
So I'd love to give you that question.
Yes, absolutely. Which is why early on, when you asked me how do you choose the company, and I put the emphasis on who is the founder and how open are they. This is the conversation I would have. Are there sacred cows in this business? Is there anything that's untouchable? Is there any person that is untouchable? And so early on, I try to not only have the conversation, but also get commitment. I've been in a position where I've done an authority matrix before I took the role, just to be clear that I will have the authority to do XYZ changes when the time comes. And so I think it's important to have those discussions early on. I believe in fairness and giving people the chance. Sometimes people are not performing because they haven't given the right guidance or opportunities. So I do believe in making sure what the expectations are and providing all the tools. And to your point, there are times, unfortunately, companies outgrow people. Sometimes people outgrow companies, companies outgrow people. And those tough decisions need to be made. But I think they need to be made with respect and dignity, and being truthful in those conversations. And it's really hard. It's hard because it's people's livelihoods, it's people's dreams. And at the same time, those are tough decisions that need to serve the business. So you have to go through that. In the absence of making those decisions, I think it's really, really difficult to succeed long term.
And I think there's a bunch of people that I know, including myself, that
Mhm.
understand without somebody coming and telling us
Mhm.
what's the scale at which, the fit's not right for me. I'll just speak for myself.
Mm.
One, I have no interest in being the leader of a company that gets past 150 people.
Yes.
It's not my thing.
Mhm.
And that's okay.
Mhm.
It's the way I like it. Some people might need to be helped to see that.
Yes. And I will say from my experience, there have been times where people felt relief when we had that conversation, because there are times where people know this is no longer what I enjoy. This is not what I'm good at. This is not what I'm passionate, but they're trying to hold it together because they have loyalty to the founder, loyalty to the company, excitement about it. And so I've also experienced when they feel relief that that pressure is taken off. And look, there are times where great people with great institutional knowledge can find another role in which they can succeed within the same company that fits their capabilities or their potential or where they are in that moment better.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we can go back to points 4 and 5.
All right. Point four is culture. I think one of the really important parts is culture, and culture is really, it's the unseen architecture of scale. It's intangible, so it's harder to measure. But the reality is, oftentimes when you're in a founder-led business, most times I've been at a founder-led business, people describe it with the words family or care and those things. And when you scale, you have to be intentional about what you value and what you tolerate in an environment. Oftentimes, accountability needs to be introduced and have a more performance based culture, have more metrics that doesn't really exist that much in founder-led cultures. So when I think about cultures that scale, I think about psychological safety. How do we create an environment in which people feel vulnerable and open to share their perspectives? An environment where people can fail fast and learn and not feel that they will be blamed for mistakes, because that's how you grow and learn. An environment where there's clarity on what is expected, but there's also accountability to yourself and to others around you. And then I think communication is a big one. When you're a smaller team, a lot happens through osmosis, through informal conversations. You're just having a conversation, you're caught up and you're aligned. As you scale and you have different levels of leadership and different departments, cross-functional departments, and you no longer wear 10 different hats, but you actually have to collaborate, communication and having a culture of communication, the systems really become key to stay aligned and also execute. And then the last one, number 5, is the financial rigor. Cash is king when you scale from a startup. So really having rigorous cash management, understanding metrics, managing what really matters, I think is really important, because you can quickly get yourself in a tough position when you're not doing scenario planning, and losing one customer can have a huge impact. So being aware of the different scenarios, how do we plan for it? How do we plan for cash? How do we plan our resources to not waste them, becomes even more important. And when you're in a multi-billion-dollar company and your budget, it won't matter as much.
Back at the top of your list was process, and I
Yes.
have a funny story about
Mhm.
process. So I was asked to come in and do a turnaround of a venture-backed startup, which,
Mhm.
by the way, is almost an oxymoron, because venture-backed startups can't really do a turnaround. But I was asked to try, and it was maybe 75, 80 people, I think, at the time. And they got the idea that they needed more process. So they had some leaders that created a series of process improvement groups, and they were all meeting all the time when I first got there. And I said, what are you guys doing all the time in these meetings? What's
Mhm.
going on? Well, these are process improvement groups. And they told me what they were for. And I said, do you realize what process improvement group, the acronym, would be for that? And that's exactly what you guys are doing. No one was doing any work. They were just sitting around talking about pigs. I said, no more. Stop it. We'll take another approach to putting in just a little bit of process here and
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
to make things repeatable and work. Once you've gotten the lay of the land,
Mhm.
you've worked on people that don't fit. You've brought in some new people that are just the right skill set, they understand this stage of company, and they're going to be able to push it to the next level. So then how do you think about how this team, especially the senior team, but even the people that report to them, how do you help them make the transition from, we could make decisions with, 2 signatures, we could get things approved. We have weekly all hands meetings. That's how we find out if there's any changes in direction, et cetera, et cetera. And so how do you go about getting that team to really operate on all cylinders?
I think it starts with having an operating cadence, whatever that looks like. I've tried different ways, but the operating cadence is about alignment of the team, staying in lockstep, having a mechanism to do. I've used objective key results. Here is what we want to do. Here is how the goals cascade down. And that really goes to, again, alignment, accountability. I like to have consistent meetings. We talk about what we want to accomplish. We have a set agenda in which we discuss what the issues are, what we're trying to solve, how we're performing against our commitments. But we also start our meetings with, what are some wins we see across the business? What are some positive things? What are some areas where people displayed our values in a great way? And it's really to set the stage, to have a positive start to a meeting, and also to condition ourselves to look for the positives, because the road can get tough. And so we do that. We set goals together. based on what the organizational strategy is. And then we work through it. We communicate and make sure when there are obstacles, how do we remove those obstacles? We try to problem solve together on those pieces. And then it's really important to always remember the why. When people, even if they don't agree with what we're doing, but they understand why we're doing it and why it is important, they can get on board. You don't have to agree with everything, but you can be committed to a common cause if you have that conversation and get that agreement and alignment. But I think this is the part where culture comes in. Because culture is about how we interact with each other. It's about what does great and winning look like. It's having those shared definitions. So I definitely look to put work into that and then integrate it throughout the different business processes.
When you're not the CEO, when you come in as the COO,
Mm-hmm.
and you will have had numerous interactions with whoever that is, and it feels good to both of you. But then once you start really working, you might have some conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
And, she is still your boss, even if you report to the board,
Sure.
and so does that person. So have you had a situation where you've really had some strong disagreements about, what you're trying to do and how you're doing it?
Yeah.
Hi, the podcast you are listening to is a companion to my recent book, Tech Startup Toolkit: How to Launch Strong and Exit Big. This is the book I wish I'd had, as I was founding and running 8 startups over 35 years. I tell the unvarnished truth about what went right and especially about what went wrong. You could get it from all the usual booksellers. I hope you like it. It's a true labor of love. Now back to the show.
Absolutely. I think that, and I think you should. I think it's a positive when you're not in agreement with everything. I've always said I want to have alignment in values with my boss or the founders or, the leadership team, but we want to bring different perspectives to the table. And so what that means is occasionally you're going to have conflict. And I think a lot of conflict is just different perspectives. And every once in a while, you get to a point where you have violent disagreement or you just feel very different about that. And I would say earlier in my career, I definitely didn't do a great job navigating through that as I think about an example there. Today, I think having the conversation and being open and sharing the perspective helps. I think it's really important to sit down and have the conversation of where I'm coming from, but also take the time to understand where the CEO is coming from. There is a reason why they don't agree. And I'm sure it's valid perspective in how they're thinking about it. So I've learned oftentimes when you sit down and you show curiosity and truly try to understand their perspective instead of just pushing your agenda through, and then are open and vulnerable about what you are trying to accomplish and how things are getting in the way, and then tied back to, at the end of the day, we both want the company to succeed. I have found that you get to good solutions in the end. And if there is ever a time where at the end of the day, I'm respectful of if we've had the conversations and we still disagree, and I will support the organization. I'm not going to go and, do something else. I'll support the organization in the direction we're going. Thankfully, I've not been in a situation. Actually, that's not true. I've been in a situation once where I felt after an acquisition, the CEO and I had very different beliefs, and I felt it was time for me to change my journey. That has happened as well. It was just going to be a battle every day on fundamental values, not on perspectives, but fundamental values. And that just wasn't going to work for anyone.
Well, one more question on the sort of, I don't know, negative side of things, because, mistakes are how you and other people learn. The whole way in which I wrote that book was about, here are the mistakes I made. And, but so in all the times that you were brought in and doing scaling, what was a situation where there was a misstep and that, And then you learned something from it. And what was that? And
Mhm.
just maybe tell us about one of those examples if you
Sure.
have one.
It's going to be one of many examples. I think the one example that really made me rethink operational scale is when you scale without process clarity, when you scale bringing in more revenue and you really focus on the go to market side, but operationally you're not ready to deliver the goods. You don't have the process, you don't have the clarity. They have to be in lockstep. And the example I'm describing, they weren't in lockstep. We were growing fast, which was exciting. And we took on a really large client that we, had challenges with because then we had to put our best people on that operationally. And it was at the time 60% of our revenue. So you can imagine how important that was. But what happened was the 40% of the revenue, we started churning clients. We started losing clients. And that's really tough because now your client base is less diversified. So you put yourself in an even tougher position. You lose people. They get demoralized when you get fired by clients. When clients leave, it does have an impact on your reputation. So a lot of really challenging things came out of that. We recovered. We worked through it, but it was a very painful lesson for a lot of reasons. So now what I really try to be thoughtful of is even though I play a bigger role on the operational side, I always try to stay in lockstep with sales leaders and on the go-to-market side, supporting them and understanding what we're trying to accomplish so we can really build the right level of capacity for the growth that we're hoping to accomplish.
That's great. I have one final question for today,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about grit. The word has lots of words are sort of components of grit, like resilience, stick-to-itiveness, drive, determination, and a really important one, courage.
Mm-hmm.
And I have never, and I don't think I ever will, meet a startup founder or leader,
Mm-hmm.
senior leader, who doesn't have a lot of grit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd love for you to tell us the source of your grit, where did it come from for you?
That's a great question. I think it's a combination. I think it's partially how you grow up. I think I had great role models when my parents, my dad, just looking at their stories, what they have gone through in their lives, going back generations. I think it shapes you and it puts you in a mindset that not staying committed to something or not succeeding is just not an option. And so you don't think about that option. You just think about what success looks like, what the journey looks like, staying committed to it, getting up when you fall flat on your face and seeing the silver lining in situations because we're all going to go through disappointment. But the question is, how quickly do you recover from disappointment and take that lesson and continue your journey? And so I think it's just a mindset of staying focused to your goal. I remember when I was younger, my dad would show my brother, I have an older brother, and myself to really, before we go to bed, to put the goals on the ceiling. The goals, so you had it front of eyes. You're literally, before you go to bed, you're thinking about what your goals are. And at that point, obviously there were business goals, but there were still goals that you commit to and that you're pushing through. So I think that part, and then the part of not wanting to disappoint, I think when your parents give up a lot, you want to come through. You want to show them that whatever they gave up in their lives, it was worth it. And so I think you just, make that part of your mission as well.
So you literally would tape it up
Yes.
there?
Yes.
Didn't
And
you
he
have to
would have,
stand on the bed how did you,
no, when you lay in bed and you look at the ceiling, you can see it. Or he would have color coded dots on the watch that would be reminders for certain things. Right. And so he was, we learned a lot, and he is a very good problem solver. Even at a young age, he wouldn't say, you can't do this. It would be a conversation and a debate why it doesn't make sense on Saturday evening to go out and party when you have an exam on Monday, so you'd have a debate about it and you'd solve a problem together. And I think all of those little things kind of shape your mindset and how you feel. And then I have a brother who I think is one of the most brilliant people, serial entrepreneur. And so there's always been a little bit of also competition, always let's win. And I mean, even at a young age, everything we competed in everything you can think of. Right. So I think we keep each other on our toes as well.
And is he nearby? You guys, able to sort of,
Yeah.
tell each other what you're up to and give each
Yeah.
other advice and compete
He-
some more?
Yeah, he lives in Germany, but actually he's in the US right now. I'm flying out to see him today. So it's been a while. It's been a year. I haven't seen him. So I'm looking forward to seeing him tonight. And yeah, I can definitely ask him for advice. He has a ton of experience in areas that I have a lot to learn. I mean, he's an AI genius, real entrepreneur, lots of success with many companies. And so he has more of the subject matter expertise when it comes to technology. And I definitely tap into his knowledge or even his podcasts and different things that he puts out there. I'm a follower of his as well.
That's great. Well, this has been wonderful, Talin. Thank you so much for joining me and talking about scaling and something that you've found a wonderful niche.
Mm-hmm.
It's not actually a very small niche. It's a very big niche, but it's still great. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jothy. Thank you.
All right, founders, here's your toolkit from today's conversation with Talin Andonians. Toolkit number 1, you can't scale heroics. When you're small, you solve problems through the extraordinary efforts of individuals, but that doesn't scale. You need repeatable processes and operational discipline. Just don't over-process to the point where you kill innovation. Find that moving sweet spot. Toolkit number 2, keep go-to-market and operations in lockstep. Talin learned this the hard way. When you grow revenue faster than your operational capacity to deliver, you end up putting your best people on your biggest client while your other customers churn away from you. Scale both sides together or pay the price. Toolkit number 3, have the sacred cow conversation before you start. Before you take on a scaling role or bring someone in to help you scale, get explicit agreement that there are no untouchable people or processes. Without that commitment up front, you'll hit walls that you can't break through. Now go identify one process in your company that currently depends on individual heroics and start documenting how to make it repeatable. And that's our show with Talin. The show notes contain useful resources and links. Please follow and rate us at podchaser.com/designing successful startups. Also, please share and like us on your social media channels. This is Jothy Rosenberg saying TTFN, ta-ta for now.